It's a big week for tech news in this part of the world. So what exactly is China doing to its tech companies? Hello there, hope you are doing very well indeed. It's been a while since I've done a video. I took a little bit of a break, so I was doing quite a lot of speaking events in person, which was quite exciting. But also there wasn't really that much interesting going on in the world of tech. I was about to do a feature on Windows 11 and how that may make some of your hardware obsolete, and whether that was a thing about we are just wasting electronics and leading to global warming and destroying the world. It seemed like a great topic, but perhaps not massively exciting. And then this week, loads of stuff happened. In this part of the world, it has been a bit of a chaotic time. So in Hong Kong right now, the time I'm recording this, which is the 6th of July, in case you're wondering, there's a lot of concern over whether technology companies are fearing that they have to pull out of Hong Kong because of changes to Hong Kong's data privacy law. Now, in case you don't know what's going on, they are amending it to bring in a new offence relating to doxing. During the protests in 2019, lots of people were leaking other people's information online without their consent. Home addresses, sometimes phone numbers, all sorts of things, who they were related to, maybe even photos of them. And they're trying to change the law to essentially make that an offence. Maximum penalty, imprisonment, plus, I can't remember exactly how long it was for, it might have been up to 2 years, but I know that the monetary fine is suggested it will be 1 million Hong Kong dollars. Now, it's only in the consultation stage. I have read the consultation paper and I have commented on it. I was wondering why we're not amending the rest of the law. Why don't we bring our data privacy law up to scratch? Why just focus on doxing? But I have now heard, and I haven't seen the letter, that a conglomerate of technology companies have said because they worry their staff might be impacted. So for example, if a platform was used for doxing and they don't remove material, would their employees responsible for that platform then be subject to the same, I suppose, criminal liability, at worst, imprisonment or fines? They're threatening to pull out. They're actually saying that they may even then withdraw all of their services from Hong Kong, which would mean, for example, the end of Google in Hong Kong, which for most people living here, I think would be a disaster. We are still very much reliant on Western technology services, and without Google Maps, I probably would spend 90% of my time wandering the streets completely lost. To be honest, I probably spend most of my time wandering the streets completely lost, even with Google Maps. It doesn't do brilliantly with elevation in Hong Kong, but there we go. Anyway, that's big news. That is an ongoing story, and I will update you on that as things develop. I will do a video once we have a full text, a bill of the amendment to the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, which is our data privacy law. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. Let me grab a drink. I want to talk about big tech and what's happening in China. Now, about a year ago, there was the congressional hearings against Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook. I think I got the big four correct there. There was allegations they were too big, antitrust concerns that they were responsible for anti-competitive or behaviour that was in breach of antitrust rules, and there was even talk of breaking them up. At the time I did a video, you can probably go back and watch it, but nothing really happened because of that. Mark Zuckerberg looked a bit silly in a congressional hearing and made him, people photoshopped him to look like data out of Star Trek, and that was kind of as far as it went. We probably found more about these big tech companies through the the Epic versus Apple trial from a couple of weeks, couple of months ago. But in China, things were a bit different. So something very big happened with Alibaba. You remember Alibaba. If you live in this part of the world, you can't get away from them. You should be aware of them everywhere else. Biggest tech IPO in New York that's come out of China. Absolutely huge. Jack Ma somehow fell out of favor, went missing for a little while, and Alibaba shares plummeted. Alibaba seemed to be being investigated for antitrust allegations by the Chinese authorities. That's still playing out. Jack Ma apparently is painting. That's the phrase we hear in the news. I don't know exactly what that means. It remains to be seen when he will actually take more of a public role again. But Alibaba is a huge behemoth. It ticks on. It depends. We wait to see what the Chinese authorities, what the Chinese government will do with it. But the news this week relates to Didi. Now, Didi is a ride-hailing app. It's the equivalent of Uber in China. They actually pushed pretty much Uber out of China when they launched, became big. They are being investigated now. So their app has been removed from app stores in China. You can still use the app if you've downloaded it, but you can't get it at the moment, at the time I'm recording. So that's been removed, and they're being investigated for misuse of data, collecting too much data, using too much data, doing whatever it is they do with data. And they only recently IPO'd as well. Of course, their shares have plummeted as a result. And I see a few things arising out of this. So this isn't the first time this has happened. China seems to be more, what's the word I'm looking for, concerned about the dominance and influence of its technology companies. Meituan were investigated for antitrust allegations relatively recently. Tencent occasionally bumps up against the authorities for the power that WeChat has, and certainly for not censoring material on its platforms, which can be in breach of the law. There's been lots of examples. Even JD.com has had a bit of an investigation. So it's not been an easy ride recently being a tech company. However, tech companies, aside from big SOEs and infrastructure companies, are in many ways China's lifeblood in terms of innovation. They are doing things that other companies in other countries can only dream of. Alibaba, because of the way that China works, and it's a very different system to anything you get in the West, is able to have much more power and do much more. It can link more services together, as can Tencent with WeChat. If you have ever been to China, you have had to use WeChat really to get around. Without using WeChat, it's very hard to order services, to pay for things, if you want to engage with someone in China, everyone wants to do something on WeChat. You're in to meet on WeChat. There are videos better than anything I can produce about how WeChat dominates. But of course, with all of this control, it becomes a concern of power, and you can see why there may be antitrust allegations. There are various laws now, it seems, that China is using to bring technology companies essentially to heel. So we've had antitrust. China recently passed a data security law. It's about a year old, I think, at this point. I mean, don't test me on dates. They have the cybersecurity law as well. But the data security law protects Chinese citizens' data and makes sure that the state can control what's being used where, what's being misused, I suppose, and making sure that no one private company can essentially control as much data as perhaps the state can. And it makes you wonder what's going on. What is China actually doing to its technology companies and its technology influence industry? Is it taking the influence that they have and thinking, actually, we are worried that they are becoming too big, much the same as the West was starting to think about Facebook, about Amazon, about Google, and about Apple, I suppose, too, and so on and so forth. And I do think that's the case. And you have to remember that the Chinese system of government, the way that China works in society, is very, very different to what you may see if you're watching this somewhere in the West. It's one of the things that Hong Kong certainly is having some struggles adapting to at the moment. It's a very centralized system. It's very much controlled centrally. The government essentially has its fingers in pretty much every pie. And because of that, it works in a very efficient manner. It's less haphazard, perhaps, than some governments you may have seen. There's all sorts of criticism of it that you can raise, but I will save that for someone else's video. I'm not going to talk about those. But China does like control. And what I think is happening is not necessarily that these tech companies are doing something terribly nefarious with people's data, that they're breaching antitrust regulations left, right, and center. But I think that China has taken the view, much like I think the US was starting to take in terms of their tech companies, that now these tech companies are becoming so dominant, they're becoming as big as the state. They're becoming in a position where they have so much power, they kind of have to be stopped or cut down. Now, demands to see, I wait to see where this is going to go. Are we going to find, for example, the likes of Alibaba, Didi, Meituan, who knows, actually? I suppose the list is potentially endless. And Financial, who, of course, they were going to IPO, and then that was stopped quite abruptly by China, causing lots of consternation. That was the point that Jack Ma sort of vanished for a little while, and then he came back again, painting, as I said. Are we going to find, though, that these companies get brought within the state? They become essentially state-owned enterprises. If you've ever dealt with China, you'll know that state-owned enterprises, state-owned banks, they rule supreme. Certainly the public market, the public company market is much bigger, and it's been growing exponentially in recent years compared to the private enterprise market. We will have to see. I do think, though, that we are seeing China go through a period where it's realizing that it really needs to use its harness technology and control the technology that operates within its borders. They don't care what happens outside of China. Well, they do, but it's not a massive concern to them. But they want to make sure that everything is actually under the state's control. Now, we've seen that play out as well with cryptocurrency. China is launched now its digital renminbi, and essentially banned cryptocurrency. It tanked Bitcoin as a result. Bitcoin mining has decreased. A lot of the Bitcoin miners now are moving somewhere else. I believe Kazakhstan is a good place to do Bitcoin mining if you're interested. I never really thought of it, but maybe it is. Maybe you've got a ready supply of energy and they don't mind that you can do a bit of climate destroying on the way. Who knows? But cryptocurrency has been stopped because, again, it takes away that element of control. The state can't control where the money goes. Cryptocurrency, after all, has no borders. So I do think this control thing has become key. And it asks the question, should the West be following suit? Should they be exerting more control over their tech companies? People get very upset about Amazon and get very vocal about how Amazon moves in, takes over an industry and then dominates. Or should we remain with our very laissez-faire approach? Is the Chinese model now taking control of tech companies going to stifle innovation in China? And that's what I worry about. Now, if you've ever been to Shenzhen, first time I ever went to Shenzhen, I remember saying this used to be all swamps just a few years ago. It makes Hong Kong look small, actually. It's that. I am biased towards Hong Kong, so I'll say the Hong Kong skyline is better, but Shenzhen, concrete jungle, quite impressive in terms, if you go to some of the campuses, some of the big tech giants, such as Tencent or Alibaba, they are absolutely awe-inspiring. But you wonder whether, if people now think that if they do the wrong thing, if technology gets too big or a company gets too big or too powerful, it will be brought to heel, it will actually put people off. I'd be very interested in what you think. I'd be interested in you think that the crypto market globally is going to suffer as a result of this, or if now Western investors or the West in general will become more reluctant to be involved with essentially Chinese technology companies. We already have a Chinese tech industry, a Western tech industry, and they're both still very separate. The Alibaba IPO and certainly the Didi IPO were great because they almost linked them together for a bit. It looked as if it was going to become more of a global market. But as we've seen in the last few years, globalization pushed together, now spreading apart. Is this going to continue? Let me know. Very interested in what you think. I will do a follow-up video if there is enough interest. I'll also do a follow-up video on what's happening with the doxxing law when I get some more information on that too. But very, very interested, and we will see how it all plays out. I do wonder, and this is something I talked about last year, whether we are going to see globally, as time goes on, certainly as we come out of the pandemic, more laws, both in China, both in the West and in the East, more laws regulating how technology companies can work and how much power they can have. But I do think that the two sides will take a very different approach to how it works. But who knows? It's all conjecture, it's all commentary, it's all me trying to guess and predict the future. If I could predict the future, I would have bought a load of Bitcoin back when I first ever heard about it. So I could probably have proven that I'm not very good at that, but who cares? Anyway, it's been good to speak to you. I'll be back very soon. In the meantime, take care.